Hi, I am Trisha Caspers. Welcome to Meet the Artist at ACTV. Meet the Artist is sponsored by North Auburn Artists, which is a group of about 30 artists in North Auburn, and they've been working together for about 20 years, and they have an annual studio show that is on the Mother's Day weekend. And today we have with us Loucinda Laughlin. Loucinda is a pastel artist, and she's going to be talking to us about her artwork today. Welcome, Loucinda.
Thank you.
I'm excited. I'm glad you're here. So I know you were an attorney before you became an artist. So tell us a little bit about the process of going from law to art.
Well, I like to say that I had a life before I practiced law, and then I had a life after I practiced law. And somehow I had to put 30 years in there to actually earn a living. But I was able to somewhat still do my art in the form of taking photographs. But I really kind of lost the drawing during that time period.
While you were a lawyer.
While I was a lawyer. And one of the things that scared me the most when I retired and I decided to start drawing again was that I had lost my talent. Because when I was occasionally would do it when I was practicing law, that I couldn't get focused in. And when I couldn't get focused in, things just didn't work the way that I wanted them to work. And so there were a lot of projects that ended up not being completed. Or I would end up starting a project and I'd have to work on it for 30 hours to finish it, just boom, 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 and never ever stop. And I just didn't want to get back into that. So that's what I thought I needed to do. And I actually was very, very surprised when I didn't have all that stress that goes along with that it actually started coming back very naturally.
Oh, and beautifully.
Thank you.
Clearly.
Thank you.
So what is it about, what drives you to create art?
There is, well, first off, just have something to do. I did go from a position that had a lot of hours involved in it. And when I retired, and it was like, now how am I going to fill that time? And I had to honestly say I'm very fortunate because I can do this. What actually gets me motivated to do the drawings, it is a large part about seeing something and saying, oh, gee, I really want to capture that. And I want to put my little twist on it and make it something that, I've created. And I love going through that process. So it's been a good avenue for me now that I have a lot of time on my hands.
So I understand that you use pastels in a unique way.
Unique as well as a traditional way.
Okay.
I would also, well, I wouldn't even say how I work with the pastels is unique. I do both realistic as well as impressionistic type of work.
Okay.
And I know that a lot of people don't know exactly what are pastels. Honestly, I didn't even know what pastels were. I had one time when I was in my 20s, had picked up some oil pastels and had used those, and I thought, well, I'm going to go back and I'll try oil pastels. Went into the store, bought some pastels, brought them home, and discovered I didn't have oil pastels. I had soft pastels. And as it turned out, the soft pastels ended up being much, much better for what I wanted to do. The soft pastels are actually a crayon. They call these a crayon. And they basically are pigment that is mixed with chalk. And then they are put with a binding compound. And a binding compound is just enough to hold them together. Because the other important fact that you need about these is that they also have to be able to break up when you're using them. So when you put now I don't ever use the pastel direct to the paper. So typically so a lot of people do, and you can see how when you put them on the paper and see how they have to break up. So it ends up in this powder. And if you put it direct to the paper, and I use tissues a lot, but you then spread it around, you can do this. The process that I actually came up with, because I've never had any lessons, and is that I would take the pastel and I create this powder, wrap the tissue around my finger, dip it in the pastel, and then once I'd sketched out what I was going to be doing, then I come down and I fill in what I want. If I want to do some shading in it, So if I normally have a different pad of paper that I'm doing this on, that I dip it into that, and then I can come in and blend in.
That's really interesting. So how does that compare to how other people might use them?
You know, a lot of them use them with the just direct to the paper.
Okay.
Like what I did here, where they, do it. And you can also, they use various things, like I use stubs.
Okay.
A lot of artists have used all kinds of different things to make them do the blending. And then they do the blending on the paper itself. I choose to, before I come to the paper, is to take it and already started the blending process.
Okay.
And that is why a lot of my pastels look like watercolor.
Mm-hmm. They really do.
And that's a lot of people, when they see it, they go, well, that looks more like it. And it's because of the way that I go through this process. The other reason that it does look like watercolor is because I use watercolor paper.
Oh, okay.
When I first started out, because I did a lot of just graphite and pencils types of sketchings, that I just use regular drawing paper.
Mm-hmm.
So when I started doing my pastels, I just started using that paper.
Okay.
But I realized that I needed some type of a paper that had a little bit more substance to it. One is because when you go and take it someplace, it just doesn't have any weight to it when you're using that just sketch paper.
Mm-hmm.
And I also discovered is that with the watercolor paper, you really can't see it, but it has a texture to it.
Mm-hmm.
And what's really, really nice about that texture is that it actually picks up the pastel and it holds the pastel. And that's what's actually crucial when you're doing this, because the paper has to pick up that pastel, and then there's layers and layers and layers on it. And sometimes, particularly I like the really intense colors, and that requires multiple layers and layers, to the point that almost it won't accept the color anymore.
Wow.
So that's why I found that the watercolor paper is really good about capturing and keeping that pastel there. The downside to using the watercolor paper, because it does have the texture in it, if you want to do something with specific lines in it, it disturbs the lines.
Oh, right.
An example was that I did a portrait of my daughter-in-law and my grandson, and they were wearing striped shirts.
Oh.
And when I went to do the stripes, they no longer looked like they had striped shirts on. They looked like they had sweaters with stripes, but it looked like sweaters because the pastel went into the grooves of it, and you couldn't get that line. So when I do something that actually requires a real fine line, I will still go back to the paper that is a smoother front than what I have here.
Okay.
Something I did learn when I was actually knowing I was going to be on this program, I thought I should probably know something about pastels. Because the debate we've always had is, what I do, is this considered painting? And I went through the process and I thought, well, of course it's painting, because what I'm basically doing is starting with colors here, transferring them to the paper, and it is a process of blending. So to me, that was painting. In the research that I did, is what this distinction apparently is that when you cover the entirety of the paper, it is considered a painting. It's a pastel painting.
Oh.
If you do not cover the entirety of the paper, it is considered a pastel sketch.
Oh, interesting. So you're pastel painting?
I do some sketches as well.
Okay.
Where I will let have the background just be the white, and so I do have some of those that I've done.
Okay. And I understand that you work from photographs.
I do.
Mostly. So do you want to show us the process that you go through?
Sure can.
This is amazing to me.
So what I've brought is this is the finished product. This is Minnesota Barn. And what I have is, this is the photograph that I took. And one of the things that I did when I was practicing law is I got a Sony digital camera. And I absolutely fell in love with it. And I started taking photographs. And this happened to be a photograph that I took when I went to Minnesota, and we were just driving around taking pictures of the snow, and came upon this barn. And I just loved the barn. It wasn't until I got home and I actually started looking at this photograph that I saw how truly amazing it was. What is happening in this particular photograph is this tree in front here is casting a shadow on this barn. The sun is setting to the west off over here. Or it's predominantly during the afternoon, it's over here. So in the summertime, when this tree is full of foliage, the top part of this barn was always getting the sun, but the bottom where the foliage was not.
Oh,
so what has happened is the barn literally faded away from the wear and tear. So it did a permanent painting of this tree on this barn. What you can also see in the photograph is that the tree's trunk is up through here, and it's actually darker, so you see that shadow.
Yeah.
And so it was, like I said, I didn't see this when I took this picture. It was after I took it. What's really nice about when you convert them then into the artwork is that you can correct the errors that were in the picture. In this particular picture, I obviously didn't center it very well. It's too much up here, too much sky, and I didn't have the rest of this building down here.
Okay.
So if we kind of look back at this picture, you can see how I filled in what's going on here.
And that's just your imagination.
That's where I filled in it to say, okay, I think that's what's supposed to be there.
Okay.
So what this is these are photos that, if you go on my Facebook page, I always post what I'm working on and the stages that I'm going through. So that's what these photos came from, is as I was working on the barn. The first thing that I did is I started on the sky. And typically what I do is I do the upper work first. And the reason that you do that is, particularly from me, one is that pastels tend to fall because, again, it's a powder.
Oh, the dust.
All of it comes down. If you have done work down here, when this stuff falls on it, it muddies up what's going on down here.
Okay.
So I typically start here and I work through it. Most pastel artists actually do work in a very broader way of dealing with the picture. I get overwhelmed by doing that, and I honestly do not know why. It is easier for me to compartmentalize it and do it in sections. So with this particular one, started with the sky, started with this tree, came over, did more of this one, and then you can see where I start coming down this way. And then you can see where I come on down into this, and I start moving here. And you can see where I'm starting to try to capture that shadow. And then same here, you can see it's coming out a little bit more. And then as we're getting to the end, and here it is. And one of the other things I try to do when I'm doing something is I kind of hide things. So some of the pictures have pictures within the picture.
Okay.
So you can find, like this one, you can probably see it a little better. I don't know, there's an elephant down in here.
Oh, yeah.
If you see it, it's on up here. So there's little things like that as I go through them.
So clearly you've gone from what's a red barn to a kind of a rainbow reflecty multicolored barn. So tell us about the process of the color.
Well, I can tell you the reason I didn't go with red.
Okay.
I have found red to be one of the hardest colors to bring to the pastel.
Okay.
It always comes out pink. And I have been looking at various types of reds in order to try to find that red, that perfect red, and I haven't. So I knew that I was not going to make this barn red. So then the question became what color I was going to be making that barn. And this color just kind of evolved in terms of the yellows, and you can see I did some purples and some reds in it. And then, like I said, when I got over in here, I love blues and purples. And so that's kind of what I just decided, well, that's what I'm going to end up doing over here. If you look at the photo, there's a lot more shadows that are going on in this part of it. And that's why I have more of the work that's going on here.
Okay.
Probably, though, the hardest part of this particular picture was doing the trees.
Oh.
And it ends up that, at least the way I kind of solved that problem, I think it kind of looks like a spider webby type of process, but I go in and do a very, very light coloring, and then I come in with my eraser. And I will erase where those various branches are going to be. Then I come back in with my color, and I fill in the little gaps that are on, and create the branch work that is on them.
It's so detailed.
So
it's really...
that was hard to try to figure that out. And that's where you say, where does the law fit in with this? It is a lot about problem solving.
Okay.
When I'm trying to do something and figure out one in color and exactly how am I going to depict it, to me that's a problem. And I have to come up with a solution for it. And that's what I ultimately do. And there's times I will go to sleep at night and my brain will be working on that problem. And so ultimately I wake up 3 o'clock in the morning, I'm back down at the easel because I figured out how to solve that particular problem.
And was it the same way when you were a lawyer?
Yes, I lost a lot of sleep. I don't grind my teeth over my artwork, though.
Okay.
That is one of the things that's
That's
nice.
good. I'm glad for your teeth. So let's go ahead and talk about you've got some other beautiful pieces of art here. So tell us about this one.
This is what I call Kaleidoscope Skiers, and part of the reason is because to me it does look like a kaleidoscope when you're looking through, and that's kind of what I was thinking of when I was doing it, is it's this kaleidoscope. This was a picture that was taken by my son's girlfriend, and they were coming down off the slope in Whitefish, Montana. And apparently this particular place is one of the hardest places on the slope.
Oh.
And so most people in Montana recognize this particular, even with the craziness that I did to it.
Really?
They still recognize it. But what I was really enjoying about this is that it gave me so much freedom in being able to, do those trees and just the different color and combinations. And so that's kind of how this one evolved. And so I love the colors. One of the other things, when I start the pictures, I don't know a lot of times what colors I am going to be using. So what it ends up being is that I call it set the colors. And so I have to kind of be setting the colors as I'm moving on, figuring out what colors are going to work in this particular picture.
Okay.
And it's always, so I always feel like that the upper left-hand corners, which is where I always start, that's the experimental place. And always the end of everything is down here in this lower right, and boy, by then I've got this figured out. I know which colors I'm using, I know how to use them on it, I know how to do my blendings, I know, because this picture is almost done. So this part of it goes really fast, that part goes really, really slow.
Oh, that's interesting. And I love all of these little details that you have. I mean, you can kind of see shapes in there, like the elephant.
Yes, there are shapes hidden within this one too, and I don't ever tell people what they are. It's just kind of let them figure out. and some people see different things than I do.
Right.
But when I'm doing them, I actually go, oh, well, that kind of looks like a giraffe, or oh, that one kind of looks like a mouse. And that actually does help me in kind of completing it within it, when I can kind of put, oh, so that's what that is going in there. And there's no rhyme or reason as to why.
It's so interesting, and it's so interesting that this is snow. This was snow.
This was snow. It was basically, so those colors that you see are the grooves that were made by the skis.
Oh, okay.
That's what you're seeing with all of those. So you can see as they've gone through.
Yeah, it's so different. Okay, well, tell us about this beautiful cat. This is your cat.
Actually, it's a friend of mine. It's her cat. And again, it was the same woman where I went out photo shooting doing the Minnesota barn. It was one of her cats. And what happened with this particular cat was that I was captured by the eyes. I love eyes. And for some reason, throughout my entire time I've been drawing, I can do eyes.
Oh.
And so I had always been trying to decide, am I going to do a dog's eyes? Am I going to do human eyes? And then this particular photograph was, oh, these are the eyes that I want to do. And then what was really fun with this particular one was the whiskers. Again, I love it when I get to use just, enough there that you can see exactly what it is, but then you bring in these colors that aren't really unexpected, and working within them. Now, what I should explain too about this particular picture is that this is actually a photograph of the pastel.
Oh, wow.
And then that photograph is put on canvas.
Wow.
So this isn't the original pastel. This is where it's now been photographed and put on canvas.
And it's still so brilliant and stunning.
It did. And this, the original on this is actually a 16 by 20 pastel.
Oh my gosh.
So I really did blow this one up. And the reason I did is because I just thought, oh, those eyes just want to, you want them in that room. And
is it in your, do you have it in your house?
Right now it's in the living room.
And does it follow you around?
My husband says it is. It does. And, because I do like to do portrait work, and I do a lot of portrait work for my family, my youngest son was telling me the other day, he says, Mom, we don't need any more pictures. I've got too many eyes following me around in my house.
Well, you're so good at them, so clearly. And speaking of portraits, you have a portrait there behind you.
This is another portrait, and actually I'll show another one with this. So this is my niece, and my niece, this is actually a realistic picture of her. This is another pastel of her.
And this is yours. One of yours.
This is
yes,
one of mine.
And so different. The style is so different.
So this is a print, of the pastel.
It's beautiful.
And so as you can see, she's one of my favorite subjects. I have quite a few where she has been the subject matter. So this can then show you where I've taken it. So this was the more traditional way of doing portrait type of work. And then this is where I took her on into this more to me, is a very 60s type of look. And that's really what I was doing here. And part of the reason was because the glasses reminded me of the glasses that they wore in the 60s.
Right.
And so I call this one Retro Reflections, because it's reflecting from what you see in her glasses. And then also it's because it's so retro.
And this is also, these are from photographs as well.
These are from photographs.
Yeah.
I always operate from photographs.
Yeah.
I'm not original enough to just sit there and draw something. I always felt like I should be able to do that, but I don't. I need at least something to start with.
And you're creating a whole new piece of art.
Well, I hope that's what I'm hoping to do. And part of the thing too, when you're doing work like this particular piece, this is actually, I think, very stressful, because this one has to be the likeness of the person.
Right.
And that's what the expectation is going to be. There is no such expectation over here. I mean, look what I did to her teeth. So this is, I like that. This gives me so much more freedom. I'm a nail biter. These I bite my nails on. The others I don't do that.
Well, and I can see after having a career in law where you just want to cut yourself some slack.
I do. That's true.
So, you have some other artwork over there.
I do.
Okay.
I brought some other pictures that are along the lines of my the more traditional, realistic type of drawings of pastels. This particular pastel was done from a picture that a friend of mine took. And I don't know if people are familiar with Lowry's restaurants. They're down in, they started down in Los Angeles, and now they're all over the world. And my friend actually helped set up the restaurants, and she was setting up the restaurant in Seoul, South Korea. And one day she came around the corner, and there were all of the waitresses standing at the bar. And so she shot this picture. So I really feel quite fortunate that she saw this picture and she shot this picture. As soon as I saw it, I thought, this is a picture that I really want to do. The Lowry's restaurants are known for their brown gowns. That's what they call these. And when I asked her if I could do the picture, and she just says, I don't know if you're going to get that color, if you're going to get that brown. But she tells me I did. I did end up capturing this one.
And their bows.
And this is actually pretty funny too, because there was always one waitress that hers was absolutely perfect. And I think you can see her in here, this one with the really perfect bow.
Yes.
All of the others are pretty haphazard. But
well,
this
she's straight on.
Yes, so. but she always did. Her bows were absolutely perfect.
Okay.
But it was also fun with it because, catching the direction, it's just all the way their feet went. This is actually one of the first pastels I did.
Wow.
This is before.
That's impressive.
Yeah, I discovered these neat little items.
Oh my gosh.
Because I did all of this with my finger.
Wow.
And because I didn't know that you can take one of these stubs, and I actually, again, because I like the effect of the tissue, I put this around it, and now I do that. So I can get in closer with these little things, and I have various sizes that you can use. But I didn't do that with this one. So that's the thing that I always tell people that's amazing really about this. So this is all done with my finger or by taking the tissue and wadding it,
and
to
making
get
a point.
My little point.
Yeah.
And dipping it in the pastel in order to do it. So this was just, again, another problem solving for me, because I've never taken any classes to tell me how to do this. I've just got to figure out now how to do it.
Okay. Well, let's look at one more. I think we have time for one more.
One more? We got through that fast. Okay, this is another one that's very more of a realistic. This is 3 boxers, just to show that, yes, I actually can draw. I don't do just craziness. And I also would like to just show my latest, because I just finished this one. These others are prints. And this is Rio de Vio. And this was taken from a photograph that a friend of mine took when he went to Venice. And it was, again, one of those that as soon as I saw it, it was one that I thought, oh, I really do want to do this pastel. And what it does is because I love it, how it takes your eye clear down to it. It had a lot of challenges for me. I do not like doing water.
You wouldn't guess.
Yeah, it's the number of headaches that water gave me.
Oh my goodness.
But I do love doing the buildings.
It's so beautiful. And so in the sky, all color in the sky.
There's a lot of consistency with what I do with skies.
Yeah. So you must go through the world looking at what you can create out of, either creating your own photograph so that you can create it, or seeing other people's photographs and then creating from there. You must just have your eyes on all the time.
I do. Well, I carry my camera all the time.
Okay.
And in fact, I shoot up some people's weddings as well. They always joke is that here's Lucinda's. You can see Loucinda because she's the one that has the camera in front of her face. And so yes, and that has become kind of my step into it. And so I am always looking for that picture. And now I'm looking more is what will translate on into the pastels.
Yeah. It's so you would have to just be aware all the time.
It is. And unfortunately, I do have a lot of friends who take some great photos too.
Oh, that's handy.
Yes.
And so when you are in, I mean, do you feel like it's a puzzle when you're in there? Do you feel like you're puzzling pieces together?
I usually have a pretty good idea of where it's going to go, because it is staying true to the picture. The forms, just like in the Kaleidoscope Skier, those skiers were actually there.
Okay.
And then what I just do is that, I'm tweaking it from what I'm seeing there. So it's not totally free, let's just see what comes out of my head. I still have some form of the photograph telling me what to do.
Okay. And how long ago was it that you took all of this on, that you started creating in this way?
In 2015.
So it's been 2 years.
2 years.
Oh my goodness.
Yes.
And you're so prolific.
I am. I do about 24 a year.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Wow, that is incredible.
Yeah, it takes about 30 to 40 hours for most of them.
Wow. Well, and we're so glad that you're here in Auburn and you're creating art.
It's been wonderful, and it's been an incredible community, how they embrace the artist.
Yes, that is true. Well, I think that is all that we have time for today, but if you would like more information about the North Auburn artist, the website is northauburnartist.com. And if you'd like more information about Loucinda, you can find her on Facebook. Her name is spelled a little bit differently, so it's Loucinda Laughlin.
Yes.
So look for her on Facebook. You'll see her business page where she has her artwork up. And definitely tune in and watch more of the Meet the Artist programs. This is our second one, and we'll have many, many more to come.
Thank you.